Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second day of our Doors Open weekend. I hope you've enjoyed the films so far. We had some on yesterday, and this is the first one for today. And this is an interview with Ann Mackay, who is the archive assistant in Nucleus, the Nuclear and Caithness Archives. My name's Lorna Steele. I'm the Community Engagement Officer for the Highland Archive Service, and you'll maybe be familiar with my voice from the Learn with Lornas, but this weekend I'm trying to include some other voices, some other views from across the service. So I will let Ann introduce herself before we go any further.
Hey, good morning, folks. My name's Ann Mackay. I've been an archive assistant at Nucleus for about 18 months now. A complete change of direction for me because I have no history background whatsoever and simply needed a job on this side of the town. But quite honestly, I think the best move I've ever made. This place is absolutely amazing, from the building to what the actual job is.
Awesome. Well, we'll come and talk on all those things. Yeah, every day is different. So, as you'll be familiar with from me saying in previous films, we've got 4 archive centres in the Highland Archive Service. So, Highland Archive Centre in Inverness, Lochaber Archive Centre in Fort William, Skye and Lochaber in Portree, and Nucleus, the Nuclear and Caithness Archives up in Wick. And that is where Ann is based, and she's going to tell us about something about the building, things that normally happen there, what they've been doing the last few months, and some of her favourite collections. So this is Ann, because I know you'll only be able to see her in a tiny little picture on the bottom of the screen. So here's a good sized picture of Ann so that you can see who I'm talking to. So this is the very striking Nuclear and Caithness Archives. You were saying, Ann, it's an absolutely beautiful building.
Yes, it was based initially on the shape of Crofters Fields in Caithness, hence everything was triangular. And on the way in, they built triangular lochans, one of which you can see there on the left-hand side. So there's currently 3 of those, which they fill with water and it reflects through the panes. But on first impression, when you walk in, you just think, wow, this is just one big grey mass. But with the way they have the light and the airy feeling, a lot of open plan, it's just fantastic. It's so different.
Yes, it is. It's such a lovely, light, bright building to work in. It's the same inside, isn't it?
Yes, lots of space, which, of course, in these times has been an absolute godsend, because it means Absolutely. We can be back in the building and very easily be social distancing. Mm-hmm. As you can see on the picture on the left, Callum's there with a group of people in an exhibition, because we would normally at this time of year have groups in, have visitors in, like all the other centres, and be running a lot of outreach activities. But
yeah, absolutely. Things have had to be a bit strange for all of us the last few months. And that's some examples of things that, just as you were saying, school groups and different groups. And I think you were involved particularly with care home visits and the young farmer visits.
Yes, we did an evening with local Bower Young Farmers Group, which was absolutely fantastic, because they just dived right in there. The newspapers, Hugh Lyle's diaries, you know, it was them that actually pinpointed, well, look what's actually in here.
Yeah.
But we'll touch on them later on. But the sheer enthusiasm of the kids when they come in, it's somewhere different from them. But with the care homes, I've been out to like daycare centres, residential homes, and some of them actually come and see us, and they just love it, because it's memories. It's provoking. Oh, I mind that wifey there when she was in the corner shop, and I mind when that school was there, and it's lovely because it's something for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think you've just absolutely touched on what we're always trying to do, which is bring in new audiences. People, try and dispel, as much as we love our academics coming in and using our collections, dispel the image that they're only for academics. And that children can be excited by them, and a young farmers group can find all sorts of interesting information in them, and maybe they didn't think they would.
No, but that's it. And we actually had information come in yesterday through one of the Hamptons collection that we'll see shortly, which is an article explaining that young farmers actually started in Caithness. That's where the groups kicked off. So
Oh,
I think, wow, it's
yeah, you're already a part of history.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, yesterday's a part of history, but yeah, it was good for them, and they were just blown away by the expanse, the history of what they could actually see. It's
Mhm.
not just dusty old volumes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another common misconception, is it? And that you can put your hand on them and have that kind of tangible connection to history and to the past of the place that you
Yes.
feel passionate about. Yeah.
Yeah, because even the youngsters were seeing photos of their mums and grannies in the paper.
Yeah. Yeah. Or school photos, things like that, and they bring
Yes.
back memories of things.
Oh gosh, yes.
So we were
And
saying that you're an archive assistant, and I had said to you, what do you think the job involves? And apparently you've got an enormous list of what the job involves.
yeah, we actually sat and thought about this the other day, and the list ended up just a whole page from answering inquiries, research. Obviously, recently a lot of our activity has been on virtual, online, Facebook, cross posting, websites, and also creating resources.
Yeah.
As we weren't furloughed during lockdown, we changed our focus to use digital material to create resources for schools, outreach, learning, and communities. A lot of our regular readers had started keeping COVID diaries.
Yeah.
And eventually, when we do have personal contact with them again, hopefully we can start running those as part of a series.
Yeah.
But it was fun and interesting, making up everything from spot the difference, word searches for all age groups.
Well, like you say, we absolutely had to suddenly think out the box of how, you and I were chatting before about how abrupt that end was to
Yes.
the world
Yeah.
being normal, and then buildings closing, and you go home and go, what have we got that we can use to continue to connect with our local audience and our international audience?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I literally just got a phone call in the morning. You do not come in today. So
Yeah.
I didn't even have a laptop at that point. But we managed, once we got ourselves organised and started accessing how much digital material we already had, then
Yeah.
we could figure out how to use it, how to create things from it.
And you did all sorts of things. So you were saying that you spot the difference in word searches for young people, and you were saying they were sent out to people in the community.
Yes, a lot of them were accessed. We were getting inquiries in, so we would send a link to the web page that people could simply download whatever they wanted,
Yeah.
be it historical information, entertaining reads like the War of the Orange, things like
Yeah.
that. So we just
And
put it all out there for communities to access it as they required.
as they needed it. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And
yeah.
and you, as well as all the other offices, sending things out, packs out to care homes, or digital packs out to care homes, so that those people who would be used to having visitors and a lot of interaction just had something a bit different to look at,
Yes, yeah.
reminisce over. Yeah,
Oh,
all sorts
yeah.
of things. And so, can you tell me about some of the collections that are held in Nucleus? Obviously, you've got local authority records, the Highland Council, as we all do, but some interesting deposited collections in Nucleus as well.
I mean, after 18 months, I'm still just scraping the surface, but each one that comes out, you just think, wow, like a lot of people come in, they want to see old school records that are now open. And you'll come across little snippets like the boy who was, it's 1919, the boy who was locked in a cupboard over the weekend. None the worse for wear when they found him on, I think it was Tuesday morning, so he was there for 3 days. But then you think, well, hang on a minute here, was he reported missing? So you get the constabulary books out and have a look to see if there was anything, but no, he wasn't.
No, they weren't
So
bothered.
maybe his parents were grateful for the rest, Um,
It's all
yes,
about stories.
yes, it really, really is. The massive collections from estates there are still in the process of being catalogued. The massive Hamiltons one that has come in just gives us a huge picture of agricultural life in Caithness and parts of Sutherland from 1922 onwards.
And that was a collection that was kind of actively gathered in, wasn't it? There was an appeal.
Yes. Ian Thompson, the last managing director of Hamilton's and UA Partnership Limited, was really passionate to preserve the history of the auction mart. And the other chap in the picture, Peter Mackay, was, I think, one of the last auctioneers. So they put an appeal out in the paper, and the stuff just came in. You can see that is a tiny part of it that's there. So they used it for an exhibition and raised a phenomenal amount for cancer research.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the intention was, if we hadn't been in lockdown, with it being county show time, things like that, they were going to have come up, we'd have done exhibitions, talks, things like that, because the two of them together are just sheer entertainment, and their knowledge.
Yes, absolutely.
Is brilliant. But it's something we can do in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. The collection's safe now, and it's in a building that can look after it.
Yes.
And I think you'd had quite a lot of collections that have come over since you moved from within the library building over to the new build.
Yes, the most recent one that came in just when we were actually locked down was when our local newspaper office closed, John O'Groat Journal, and they literally emptied their office and put it all here. There's about 11 cages full of all sorts of wonderful things. Yes, well, my colleague Valerie will be doing a feature on that, a recording about newspapers and how they can be important and helpful. She's done a wee video on that for Doors Open Day. Mm-hmm. So I'll leave that one to her because that's her pigeon. But
yep, we'll come up to it.
Yes, but we actually now have another copy of the very first edition, which is great.
Wonderful. So I asked you to pick some of your favourite images and things from the collections to chat about. Yeah. And this is the fact to see your wee face lighting up as soon as this picture comes on. Do you want to tell us about it?
I just keep going back to these because they just capture you. They were, once again, you take a box out, and I mean, in that box can be whatever somebody's inquiring about, be it old letters, things like that. But very often there'll be other collections in that same box, a bundle of photographs, advertising, things like that. And in that bundle of photographs were these two pictures of this tramp street artist, but they just absolutely blew me away. I mean, he's sitting there with his sketches and his dog, and in that second photograph, when he's putting the boot on the dog to protect its paws, I thought that whoever the photographer was, wow, you have really captured something there. And he's also carefully turned around the advertising on the lamppost in the second photograph to get it in as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
it's a beautifully framed photograph, isn't it?
Yes. And it provoked such a huge reaction and discussion as to exactly who he was. I mean, there was a few names came up. I think Paddy Fracher was the main one. But everybody just loved it. I mean, the fact that I think that lamppost is still there, I don't think that's been modernised at all. So we reckoned late 60s, possibly early 70s, just not that long ago.
Yeah, that's an extraordinary thing. When you said that to me, I thought, oh my word, they could be any time.
Yes. Yeah.
Really
good. But that's what I just love. You open something and you don't know exactly. You might find the document you're needing, but you're also going to find things like this.
You're going past other things on your way.
Yeah, end up down the rabbit hole and 2 hours pass and you think, right, so because we're doing that now, we are going to expand that catalogue to say, well, this actually includes a black and white photograph of a gentleman, street artist, tramp, things like that, because otherwise people won't be able to find things.
We always say, I always keep a notebook with me, so when I'm going into a strong room to get something and I come across something else, I jot it down, like I need to come back to that at some point and find out more about that item. Because we were saying when
Absolutely.
we were chatting before that it's not that we don't know what we have, we know what we have in our collections, but they constantly reinvent themselves depending on what you're doing. And you
Yeah.
maybe find something that you go, oh, this is really relevant to this. Or like you say, there's a bundle of, listed as a bundle of photographs, and it's only when you go into it that you discover something more about the collection.
Oh gosh, yes. Yeah. It's just fantastic. I mean, I suppose before I actually came here, I never actually thought about what an archivist did. I might have visited archives, museums, places like this. But when you're actually on the ground floor, and particularly the public contact, I mean, yes, now it's virtual, but it's still there. We're still getting people, regular readers, things like that, getting in touch with inquiries. And that's just what really makes the job. You never know what you're going to get asked.
Yeah. And for some people, it will be something of great emotional significance to them, if they're trying to track down something about their own life or a
Yeah,
family member, or, it can be a hugely personal and powerful thing looking at archives.
it certainly can. I think one of the most moving ones I came across was a lady last year that had recently discovered that she was adopted and that she possibly might have actual family up here that she was related to. She had very little information, but we did manage to get her phone number from a chap that stays not that far away from me, who has her complete family tree.
Okay.
So
It can
it
be a
was
life-changing experience for some people.
just blew her away, poor lady. I mean, I was just so delighted for her.
Yeah.
If you can give them something, you hate seeing somebody going away and not having any more knowledge than what they come in with.
Yeah. And when we're so lucky because we work in buildings full of knowledge, full of
Yes.
information.
Yeah. Oh, that's it. It's
Yeah.
that's good.
Fascinating job. So this is another
Oh,
item that we've got out to chat about. This is
yes.
a Saysine from 1663 that you chose, I think, purely because of its age and its beauty and the miracle of it
Oh,
having survived at all.
yes. It's a collection that we have from a solicitor's business that is no more. And they were all just packed up, ready for dumping. But one member of his staff saved them because she thought they were just too beautiful to dump. And
Yeah.
they eventually ended up in here. And they came to light last year when a chap was up from South doing his Sinclair family tree. And one of the Saysines in that box was relevant because it mentioned the Earl of Caithness. But of course, the box was out.
The
So
box was
we were,
opened, so
yeah, we were in there opening all the other ones up and just think, wow. I mean, for the seals to have been preserved so well,
yeah,
and Jennifer just nearly fainted with the handwriting because it is absolutely exquisite. Some are in Old Scots, some are in Latin, and they're very just simple legal documents for the transfer of land or buildings or contracts of marriage. But just to sit and look at something like that and think, wow, you have survived for hundreds of years.
yeah.
It's just it's just magic.
When I was, you could just go on with them. I know I love them as well. When I was doing one of the Learn with Lornas yesterday about court records, and I was talking about one from the 1660s, and I was like, this is pre the Great Plague and the Great Fire of London.
wow.
You know what I mean? And so is this one.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
you're able to handle it and have a real connection with it. And I just think that is so special.
it really is. It's every
It's a
time I
privilege.
find something like that, it does kind of hit home to you just how much history is up here and so much of it is untouched,
Yeah, absolutely.
sitting in cupboards and
Yes, sitting in people's houses.
drawers.
If you're listening and you have things in your house, please do contact us. We would love to look after them for you.
Oh, yeah.
And so this is another one you picked, much more recent, up in the 50s, 60s, 70s, I think.
Oh,
Extract from the John
yes.
O'Groat Journal.
Yeah, I had these out for one of the daycare centres came in, and they pounced on them right away because they can relate to this, particularly the food prices.
Yeah.
I remember when this cost 17 pence 30 pence, and it just provokes such discussion amongst them.
26p tea bags, that's what we like to see.
Yeah. But funnily enough, that one kind of struck me because the scampi is still quite expensive.
Yes.
I think it's actually cheaper now. A luxury item. But
Absolutely.
how relevant is the one about the maternity wing at Wick may close in September? And
yes,
yet
these stories continue to be
very much
relevant.
We find that with a lot of them, stories just go round and round. Some things just never change.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I would like to advocate to anyone watching that we don't put marker pen on our documents. I feel like
no.
those we haven't highlighted those.
Those are photocopies also. Yes, those were scanned and printed off simply for taking out to groups that they can actually pass them round and handle them.
Yes,
No, we don't.
They're not originals. It's just you never know.
No,
you need to clarify these things. And then the one on the left we were laughing about earlier, Minister criticising schoolgirls for wearing jeans.
Yes, I mean, I can mind start in Wick High School and you weren't allowed to wear trousers to start with. And I think you were allowed in the winter time. Woohoo. And, Dingle Academy was the same when I moved there. But the article itself is quite funny because he's describing them wearing like bright coloured capri pants and things like that. And I thought, good on you, girls.
An insight into a moment in history.
Yeah, that's thankfully long gone.
And this one you picked for a different reason. So this is about St John's Pool.
Yeah, I visited St John's Pool a couple of years back because they had actually built water level hides. So you really designed for photographers, people that are well into their bird life, but anyone can go in and you're at water level with the birds during nesting season or whatever. But the sheer scale of work that Julian and Rosemary and the volunteers that have helped them put in to preserve this piece of biodiversity of Caithness is really important. It's archive history is not just the books, the documents, it's the living history of the county as well.
Yeah.
And biodiversity is something we don't have a lot of information on because I don't think people connect it to archival history.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's huge, the rare plants, the rare birds, insects. There's a lot of it up here. I mean, many, many years ago, that must have been the early 80s, I was involved in a project where we were sampling insect life in SSSI sites, protected sites up here.
Okay.
Came across various different new types of insects, which were all catalogued, preserved in formaldehyde, and I have no idea where they are now. Not a clue. But no, I think the diversity aspect is something we can really build on.
Yeah. Well, I think that's interesting. So you've obviously got some information and leaflets and documents within the collections about it. But as you say, it's finding the gaps as well and going, what are we not well represented in that we'd like to be, that we feel is an important part of the area's history and the area's future as well, and kind of spotting those things in advance to try and collect them.
Yes, because all our collections are obviously in order, like private deposits are 1 to 9 beginning. When we looked at the captions we use for exhibitions, things like that, you can see that the 8s and 9s, there's mounds of captions, but the other numbers not so much. You think, well, why not? What's in those boxes? There's things of just as much interest, but they just, as you say, they haven't been expanded yet.
They haven't been explored to their full yet. And as you say, it depends what happens. It depends who asks for what, and you know, so you go into a collection and then find out a bit more about it, or as I say, use it in a different way and then discover more about it.
Oh yeah,
that's a great one to talk about, looking forward and filling the collections.
It'll always be a work in progress. Always.
Yes, absolutely. So finally, the ones you've picked, which I knew you would, it's your absolute go-to #1 collection. Tell us about Hugh Lyle and what you're doing with this collection during lockdown.
Oh, this one has just blown me away since I transcribed the first diary. to come in after grafting from morning till night and still take the time to write a few lines about how he spent his day, Bob and me, or me and Bob. I mean, Bob was his elder brother.
And Hugh was a crofter. Is that?
Yes, they were crofters. They contracted out. They did work for other farms and crofts. But the response was phenomenal because of the people that still remember them.
Yeah, so when you put them up on Facebook and social media, you had a lot of interaction with people remembering either the people or the experiences.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, particularly the one about them going to a dance, and I think there are 9 of them in the car. Yeah, there's still people that remember that one. So when I came back in last week, I thought, right, get the box out, start digitizing more of the diaries so that if need be or working from home, I've got something to transcribe. And that's when I thought, hey, hang on a minute, anonymous poems. So we took the poetry out, and there's Janet there. Donnie has a motorbike. He calls it BSA. And started reading through that and the rest of them. And they're really, really good. And they will be coming up on Facebook in the winter.
Excellent.
But we also found a letter from Bob to Hugh. I think he must have been in Orkney at the time and he'd written to his brother. So got Jennifer to work her magic and compare the handwriting, and we were over 90% sure Bob was actually the author of the poems.
So Hugh's brother wrote the poems.
Yes. Hugh's brother, Bob, could spell. In his letter, he mentions puncture. In one of the poems, I think he mentions puncture, and he can spell it, but Hugh always spelt it Puncher, puncture.
Okay.
Puncture. But there in the bottom was all the postcards as well, and photographs. But as you can see, they are the real old-fashioned seaside naughty postcards, which are hilarious. Not all of them addressed to Hugh or Bob, but we will be putting out ones that haven't faded that much that we can still read who they were addressed to. And we will be getting them up on Facebook. The wartime ones, yes, the wartime ones, it's just the age of them and the little bits in pencil, some of them written from France, places like that. But it's the fact that they were important to him.
Yeah.
And luckily, the people that bought the house, thought, oh, hang on a minute here, this needs to be somewhere, and handed in the courier bag full of absolute gems. And that's the wonderful thing. People are finding things, think, well, actually, I think we'll keep this.
Somebody should keep this. And I think that's a really interesting thing, that what we look after, we've seen this through some of the things that you've chosen. We look after huge institutional records and collections, and also the postcards that someone felt an emotional connection to keep them for 40 years. You know, that range of things that we look after is quite enormous.
Yeah, the absolute personal importance of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, no, it never fails to blow me away, I'm afraid. It really, really does.
Don't be afraid. Couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Now, before I let you go and carry on with other things, I wanted to ask you one last question, which was, what do you think is particularly important or special about archive material? Why is it important that our jobs exist and that we look after these things?
I think if we didn't, it would be a very poor future for our kids and the people that come after us. If none of this existed, there's nothing to learn from. And in some ways, there's no direction for it to go, because believe me, looking at some of these archives, you can see where things have gone wrong in the past, particularly when you compare like the Spanish flu pandemic to what's happening now. We have learned some things, but other things we haven't. But no, I think for people to have roots and grounding, they need to know a bit of history to look forward to the future. You can never change the history. You can learn from it. You can't change it. Yeah. It's there in black and white. And luckily now, I think digital media has really helped, because people think, well, it's fashionable now to get the history of your house. More fashionable now to do your family trees, things like that, especially with like your DNA testing, things like that. But yeah, no,
People are starting to see the importance of rooting themselves in something, and as you say, not necessarily being tethered to it, but using it to look forward.
Yeah, and luckily, my colleague Valerie, she is vice chair of our local heritage centre. So what we hope to do in the future is work closer with them, because we have the paperwork for the artefacts that they have. So the scope is there for some phenomenal work in the future, along with closer working with the nuclear side of the building as they decommission things that we can see and show the public. Because a lot of our queries are based on, they want to see nuclear things. So luckily one of our volunteers is putting together a superb nuclear timeline.
Okay, yeah.
Which makes brilliant reading. And we do have a certain amount of unclassified stuff that we can show them. So we're looking forward to working closer with them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. If anyone has any questions about the collections in Nucleus, or what the staff there are doing, then please just contact us after watching this, and we'll be able to advise. If you've been interested in hearing about the Hugh Lyle diaries of Anne's greatest love, sorry, Anne's husband, we will also be making some recordings of them with a local Caithness voice actor, and those will be going up on the website, so keep an eye out for those coming up soon as well. But thank you so much, Anne. It's been really lovely chatting to you and hearing about the things that you care about in your collections.
I know, it's terrible. I just talk way too much, I'm afraid. Sorry.
Wonderful. Thanks.
Okie dokie.